Let me tell you something most people get wrong. Smart people don't hate people. They hate noise without meaning. They hate small talk that costs energy. And they hate pretending connection exists when it doesn't. If you've ever felt drained just by showing up, this isn't a flaw. It's a signal. Smart people don't walk into a room casually. They absorb it. They feel the emotional temperature. They notice the tension behind smiles. They hear what isn't being said. And that depth, it's exhausting. When you're emotionally intelligent, socializing isn't light entertainment. It's emotional labor. Every conversation pulls at your empathy. Every laugh carries context. Every interaction asks you to process, interpret, and respond with care. Most people skim the surface of connection. Smart people dive, and diving costs oxygen. So when they avoid social gatherings, it's not arrogance. It's not antisocial behavior. It's self-preservation. They know that too much exposure to shallow interaction dulls their inner clarity. They know that meaningless chatter steals energy they could spend creating, thinking, or healing. Here's the uncomfortable truth depth. Doesn't thrive in crowded rooms. Smart people crave conversations that matter, not exchanges that perform. They don't want to talk just to fill silence. They want words that land, pauses that mean something, and connections that last longer than the evening. So when they pull away, it's not rejection. It's discernment. They're protecting the part of themselves that feels deeply in a world that often feels nothing at all. Smart people notice when connection is rehearsed. They see the forced laughter, the polite nods, the subtle competition hiding behind compliments. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Social settings often reward performance, not presence. You're expected to smile on cue, agree on command, and say things you don't fully mean just to keep the room comfortable. But smart people value truth over harmony. Pretending costs them something. It costs integrity. It costs emotional honesty. So when a conversation turns into a stage, they quietly step off. It's not that they think they're better than others. It's that they refuse to betray themselves for approval. They know the damage of living behind a mask. They know how slowly it erodes self-respect when you say, "I'm fine," while your body says otherwise. Here's what most people don't understand. Being real in a room that rewards fake is an act of courage. Smart people don't avoid socializing because they lack confidence. They avoid it because they have enough confidence to say no. They'd rather be alone and authentic than surrounded and pretending. And when they do choose connection, they choose spaces where vulnerability is welcomed, not punished, where listening matters more than talking, where silence isn't awkward, it's respected. That's not social avoidance, that's emotional intelligence in action. Smart people don't fear conversation. They fear empty conversation. Small talk drains them because it asks for attention without offering meaning, weather updates, recycled opinions, conversations that never move past the surface. To others, it's harmless. To them, it's a slow emotional leak. Their minds are wired for patterns, ideas, and depth. So when words circle without landing anywhere real, their energy quietly slips away. They're not impatient. They're hungry for substance. A smart person can talk for hours about purpose, fear, creativity, failure, love, or the strange ways humans protect themselves. But ask them to repeat the same social script over and over, and you'll watch their light dim. Because here's the truth, meaning is nourishment. Without it, interaction becomes work. And smart people already do enough work in their own heads. They question themselves. They reflect. They replay conversations long after they end. They analyze what was felt, not just what was said. So when socializing offers nothing but noise, they opt out, not out of superiority, but out of self-care. They know that not every room deserves their energy. Not every conversation earns their curiosity. And that's not isolation. That's boundaries. They're saving their voice for moments that matter, for people who want to go deeper, for conversations that don't just pass time but change it. Smart people have learned something most people never do. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's clarity. When they're alone, they hear themselves again. Their thoughts settle. Their nervous system exhales. There's no pressure to perform, impress, or explain who they are. And once you experience that peace, chasing approval feels loud. Socializing often comes with invisible contracts. Be likable, be agreeable, be easy to digest. But smart people know the cost of that trade. They've learned, sometimes the hard way, that belonging at the expense of authenticity is too expensive. So they stop trying to fit into rooms that require them to shrink. Solitude becomes sacred. It's where they recharge. It's where creativity lives. It's where they reconnect with their values instead of losing them in group dynamics. This doesn't mean they don't want connection. It means they want intentional connection. They don't fear being alone with their thoughts because they've already done the inner work most people avoid. They've faced their questions, sat with uncertainty, felt their own discomfort without numbing it through constant interaction. So when they choose solitude over socializing, it's not withdrawal, it's alignment. They're choosing depth over noise, peace over performance, and self-respect over social currency. And once you learn that lesson, you never unlearn it. Smart people notice what most people ignore, how certain interactions linger. They can feel when a conversation leaves them heavy, when a gathering steals more energy than it gives, when someone's unspoken expectations sit on their chest long after the goodbye. This awareness isn't weakness. It's sensitivity paired with intelligence. They understand that emotional labor is real. Listening, supporting, managing reactions, holding space, all of it requires energy, and smart people often give more than they receive. So they become selective, not because they're cold, but because they've learned burnout isn't dramatic, it's gradual. They've felt what happens when they say yes too often, when they overextend empathy, when they carry other people's emotions home with them. And once you recognize that pattern, avoidance becomes wisdom. They start asking quiet but powerful questions. How do I feel after this interaction? Do I feel seen? Or just used, am I choosing connection? Or obligation. Smart people don't socialize less because they don't care. They socialize less because they care deeply, and depth requires boundaries. They're protecting their emotional bandwidth so they can show up fully when it truly matters. Because being present for everyone eventually means being absent from yourself. And they refuse to let that happen again. Smart people often feel ahead of the room, not in ego, but in processing speed, while others are still forming thoughts out loud. Their minds have already connected the dots, anticipated the outcome, and moved 3 layers deeper. So waiting can feel tiring. They're not bored with people, they're bored with pace. Group conversations tend to reward quick opinions, not thoughtful ones. Loud voices, not careful insights. And for smart people, slowing their mind down just to match the rhythm of the room feels unnatural. They edit themselves constantly. They simplify ideas that deserve nuance. They hold back thoughts that would derail surface-level discussions. And that restraint, it's exhausting. They know that not every space can hold complexity. Not every listener wants depth. And explaining things halfway just to stay socially aligned leaves them feeling unseen. So they withdraw, not because they think others are incapable, but because they refuse to flatten themselves for comfort. They crave conversations where curiosity is welcome, where questions matter more than answers, where pauses aren't interruptions, but invitations, until they find that silence feels kinder than dilution. Smart people don't hate socializing. They hate shrinking. And the moment a conversation asks them to be less than they are, they quietly step back into the one place they're never misunderstood, thoughtful solitude. Smart people know their inner world is valuable. Their thoughts aren't casual. Their emotions aren't careless. Their ideas are shaped by reflection, pain, curiosity, and growth. So they don't hand them out freely. Socializing often invites oversharing without safety. People ask personal questions without earning trust. They expect access without responsibility. And smart people feel that breach instantly. They've learned that not everyone deserves the raw parts of them. Not every listener knows how to hold vulnerability with care. Some consume it, some judge it, some misuse it, So they become intentional. They share slowly. They open carefully. They choose depth over exposure. This can look like distance, but it's actually discernment. They understand that emotional intimacy without safety is self-betrayal. That being open in the wrong room can do real harm. So they wait, they observe, they test for empathy, not curiosity. When they don't find it, they retreat, not out of fear, but wisdom, because protecting your inner world isn't closing off. It's honoring what it took to build it. And smart people would rather be misunderstood for being private than wounded for being open in the wrong place. Smart people don't want to belong everywhere. They want to belong somewhere real. They can feel the difference instantly between being included and being understood, between being invited and being valued. And superficial belonging feels hollow, laughing on cue, agreeing to stay liked, diluting opinions to avoid discomfort. That kind of connection costs too much. Smart people know that fitting in by editing yourself is not connection, it's disappearance. So when social environments demand sameness instead of truth, they quietly disengage. They're not antisocial, they're anti-fake. They want spaces where disagreement doesn't equal rejection, where curiosity is safer than conformity, where people don't bond over gossip, but over growth. And those spaces are rare. So instead of forcing themselves into rooms that require performance, they wait for conversations that invite authenticity. They wait for people who can sit with difference without defensiveness. Until then, distance feels better than pretending, because smart people would rather stand alone in honesty than belong in comfort that costs them their voice. Superficial belonging might look full, but it feels empty. And they refuse to build a life around emptiness. Smart people often enter rooms like scientists, not performers. They listen. They analyze patterns. They notice dynamics that most people never register. They see who dominates, who hides, who shapes the energy, and how it flows. And sometimes they choose not to participate, not because they're cold, not because they're judgmental, but because their energy is precious and every engagement has a cost. They notice what matters and what doesn't. They calculate whether their presence will add value or drain them. And in many cases, silence is the smarter choice. Observation gives them clarity. It helps them understand people, situations, and even themselves. And it protects them from emotional clutter that can linger long after the conversation ends. Socializing is rarely simple for them. Every interaction carries weight. Every word and gesture has meaning. And that depth, while rewarding, can be exhausting. So they step back. They watch from the edges. They contribute only when it feels intentional, meaningful, or necessary. In truth, they're not avoiding people. They're avoiding wasting themselves. They're conserving energy, protecting their inner world, and waiting for interactions that spark insight, connection, or growth. Smart people don't hate humans. They hate the waste of themselves in meaningless interactions. Smart people don't measure life by how many people they meet or how many parties they attend. They measure it by meaning. They understand that every hour spent in shallow interaction is an hour stolen from creativity, reflection, and authentic connection. Every conversation that doesn't matter leaves an echo of fatigue in their mind. So they choose carefully. They invest in relationships that challenge them, inspire them, and nourish their soul. They show up fully when it matters and step back when it doesn't. This isn't loneliness, it's wisdom. And here's the ultimate lesson. The world misunderstands them, labels them as aloof or even arrogant, but the truth is far simpler. They're protecting their inner world, honoring their time, and preserving the depth that makes life rich. Smart people don't hate socializing. They hate empty energy exchange. They crave authenticity, meaningful connection, and conversations that leave a mark, not just a memory. So if you see someone step away from a crowded room, don't mistake it for rejection. See it for what it really is. A person choosing clarity over noise, depth over distraction, and life lived fully rather than superficially. Because in the end, the smartest people know your presence is sacred, spend it where it matters most,